Hey, so what is going on, everyone? It is me, Mr. Mario.
And PtoPOnline.
And how are you doing today, Daniel?
I'm doing pretty good. Dogs are quiet for a second, so I'm okay. How you doing?
Excellent. Oh my god, yeah, I'm doing all right. No, right before this recording, like, his dogs were just going off for about 5 minutes. We were afraid this wasn't going to work out.
Neighbors' dogs.
Yeah, neighbors. Okay, well, didn't you say it was your dogs, too, that were having, like, the big meeting and everything?
That was, yes, just anyways.
Okay. Anyways, this is ModChat episode 14, where we normally talk about modding and the universe and anything else in between that has to do with modding. And we can either talk about a topic in life or some old thing that we're reminiscing about, or the past few episodes which people have really enjoyed have been kind of just news in the modding scene that we have conglomerated into about an hour-long podcast. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think you nailed it.
Yep. So this is PtoPOnline over here, and you want to plug any of your social media stuff, anything like that?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Well, he has a YouTube channel. You can check it out down below. But we also, this is a special episode because if you couldn't tell from the title, well, thank you for being here because you probably blindly clicked it. But we do have a guest on the show, and they should probably introduce themselves as well.
Hello, I am Borman. I run a YouTube channel called PtoPOnline. My focus isn't necessarily on modding itself, but on game prototypes and just preservation of games, which modding has a huge part of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we decided to bring him on the show because, exactly as you said, modding does have a huge part of that, and I'd highly recommend checking out his channel as well, too, which will be down below in the description, where you cover quite a few unreleased games and then beta builds and all that stuff, right?
Yep, exactly. I mean, it could be anything from the crappiest game that you probably never wanted to play up to something huge like Star Wars Battlefront 3.
Mm-hmm. And the actual Battlefront 3, right? Not the one that we got.
The real one, not the whole EA thing that we call a game.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely check that out. But, I mean, just kind of going off the cuff here and everything, really what got you into video game preservation and everything, and what do you believe makes it so important to, I guess, gaming as a culture and all that?
Well, obviously all of us who are here listening now think that games are important in some way. Unfortunately, it's been shown time and time again that not necessarily the developers, but just the companies as a whole weren't doing enough to actually preserve these things. You look back to the silent film era where something like 50% or more of the silent films are lost. You fast forward in time to something like Doctor Who, which has come back huge in the past couple of years, except we're missing 90 episodes.
Really?
Now, exactly, yeah. All these old black and white episodes are completely gone because they used to basically erase the tapes because the tapes were more valuable than the shows.
That's news to me, too. I had no idea.
And then you fast forward in time to games, and the same thing was going on. They didn't learn from it. All these storage things, whether they were magnetic tapes, whether they were just ROM carts, they were used over and over again, which means big companies have lost source code. Source code like Panzer Dragoon Saga.
Oh my god, you had to bring
gone.
That. Oh, you had to bring that up. That hit me. That hit me.
But this happens over and over and over again, where companies just don't have their source code. They don't have their data. Silent Hill, when they did the HD remake, apparently they were working off old source code because they didn't have the final source code.
Mm-hmm. And I think that also happened with the Metal Gear Solid collection as well, too, because I remember there were some minor things, like, for example, when I played Metal Gear Solid 2, some of the posters were incredibly dark to the point where you could barely see them compared to the PS2 version. And then even Silent Hills, I remember that was just kind of a train wreck because they had to go in and play with an older build and fix it as they ported it. And then for some reason they changed all the fonts to Comic Sans for the signs.
And then they didn't have the effects. It was just a mess. And that's why preservation matters, because unlike things where you had like tapes years ago where maybe they sent off a tape to someplace in Africa like happened in Doctor Who, nobody was sending these tapes out. There aren't tapes of source code lying around. So you're hoping that a developer went home with it, maybe a build was sent to the press, or, I mean, old games are going to die eventually, unfortunately. So somebody's got to do this now while we still have the games, rather than hope that 100 years from now, maybe somebody will do it.
Are you familiar? I mean, I'm sure you are since this is what you're into, but Assembler Games?
Absolutely. I'm a moderator over there.
Oh, there you go. No kidding. 'Cause that's where I personally have seen a lot of stuff when it comes to developer things and also betas and whatnot. Because I remember a while ago there was a guy that was, I think he had, was it Glover too? Or there was a...
Yep.
Yeah, that's what it was. I was watching I think he was trying to like raise enough or something like that to basically like make a backup of it or something like that. But
yeah, so the thing that happens is we do public fundraisers because, like, yeah, I have some money, but I'm just a teacher. I'm not rich. So we try and ask for money and say, hey, pitch in a few dollars, we'll dump it and put it online.
Yeah, which is badass because, again, like those are things that nobody would ever get their hands on if there wasn't such thing as like those kind of forums and communities where people are interested in actually not just keeping it in a closet for themselves, but actually giving it out there to other people that might want to experience that I guess that experience that they might not have been able to otherwise.
Exactly, because those companies that made those games are gone. Like there is no going back into some vast company archive like Disney has. I mean, they're gone. So you have to rely on everybody, whether it's me who has spent thousands on prototypes or just the guy who just picked up the first one. Everything is important.
Have you for your prototypes? Have you ever gotten any of it locally, or is it pretty much all online?
It's been all online. I've come close to getting some things locally. Like I know there's people around with things, but it just hasn't worked out.
Okay. Yeah, because the only thing I could think of that I got, which I wish I had held on to, actually got rid of it on assembler years ago. But I picked up it was a test kit for an Xbox 360. Some guy had gotten to test out one of the Guitar Heroes at this facility that closed down, and I guess either all the people that tried it out got to keep it, or they were just like auctioning them off or something like that. But it was like a mint condition Zephyr board test kit, which is fucking awesome, you know.
Yeah, sometimes they just walk out.
Yeah.
Who knows how they got it? But
yeah. I mean, then the sad thing is as well, too, when you deal with the hardware and all that, I guess, how have you dealt with that, or how do you feel about that? Because a lot of it is just kind of disposed of, where there's this, it's truly valuable hardware, and it could have, even more invaluable files on it. But, for example, with the Xbox 360, I've never owned any development or test hardware, but from what I've seen, quite a few kits have actually, they go over to China to be destroyed, and they are just wrecked, like the Ethernet ports are destroyed and all that stuff, and then eventually, they kind of walk out of the factories they're supposed to be destroyed at and wind up on Taobao, but still, that's hardware that people would love to have, and it's valuable, and it's just getting sent overseas or other places to be disposed of completely.
Right, I think that's where the first kind of sets of development kits came from. I know the first one I bought was recovered from a recycling place, and it was awful. I mean, these were Xenon kits. They were the worst things you could ever want for way too much money. So that's where it starts. And the cool thing about those is they often do have data on them. When they walk out of the studios, most of the time they try to erase things off the hard drives. But these kits were all broken. So they're just ending up out there in China where they're sitting. Maybe they end up someplace cool, or maybe they throw them out. So,
do you have much knowledge with like rework type stuff to fix broken electronics, or not necessarily?
Nah, not yet. I'd like to start getting into some of it, but it's just been a cost and time thing. Yeah, I admit straight up that I have probably some of the shakiest hands ever. So even installing a mod chip was a struggle back in the day.
Got you.
And I haven't gotten much better. But I mean, I lived in college dorms for years. They don't exactly like you to be soldering inside the rooms, so
that's true. That's true. I never lived in a dorm, so thankfully I didn't have that. But I also got the shaky hands going on. But I've been able to be successful with it, thankfully.
Yeah, it's something I've been looking into recently because I mean, I have a lot of one-of-a-kind hardware that I'm gonna have to fix at some point. So gotta learn.
Of course. Yeah, I guess I'm kind of, slightly plugging right here, but I know Johnny Guns, if you're familiar with him, he's actually up in New York. I'm not sure where you're at, but yeah, I could definitely give you his info at one point later on.
He's a god.
Nice. Oh my god, he's the best. No, I send my hardware to him to get repaired and modified and all that. Well, the modifications now, I do most of them, but still he's excellent with his mods, and he has all the rework stuff.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
He's got just like the perfect. I don't know, man. Like he hasn't had any, like, as far as I know, like professional rework training. I know he worked with radios a lot, but I don't think he really did much soldering. I think it's all self-taught. But he has just gone above and beyond, like over the past couple of years, and his knowledge and just his level of skills is ridiculous. Like the stuff he can do. I mean, he just posted. I don't know if you saw the other day. I think he was repairing a Southbridge chip or something like that. Do you see that, Mario?
Was it on social media?
Yeah, it was on Instagram.
Okay, I didn't see that. I haven't been on Instagram recently.
But yeah, I mean, he did some pretty solid trace repair, and it said it took him 3 hours, but he was finally able to get the board up and going again. I mean, he's just got patient. I can't do that, man. Work on a pad for 3 hours,
No.
Yeah. No, I understand. Especially even with some systems too, you start looking at them. Like for example, I've actually been going back to the PS1 a little bit for modding because it's been interesting me again. I've been looking at it, and there's several new developments on there that are quite cool. But the thing is with it as well, there's some things like I've looked at, like for example, replacing a laser on a original PlayStation. I'm like, well, the laser assembly is like $20 at least online. A whole working PlayStation is like 15. Like, is it really worth fixing these up?
Yeah, you've got to kind of weigh out the pros and cons, or like whether it's actually worth it. Because sometimes, like you said too, if it's not super rare. I mean, I think in your scenario it's different because you've got one of a kind hardware, like you said. But for a lot of our stuff, you got to get to the point where it's like, is it worth repairing for $15 and spending all this time, or just scrapping and getting a new part?
Exactly, especially when like for example, like going back to the PlayStation here, the PS1, we know for a fact it sold 102 million units, so it's by no means rare.
I don't think we can say anything other than that.
Yeah.
I mean, the PS1 was an amazing console, and I think now, like you said, with all the new developments lately, it's finally starting to appear as an interesting thing for people.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting to where the Super Nintendo was a few years ago, where it started to pick up steam. So it's going to be an interesting couple of years for that.
The Dreamcast has really been picking up steam too. Or like I think in 2015, 7 homebrew games came out on the Dreamcast.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
It's so weird. They're still releasing games on there, and another person, Adam Korlick, who's like absolutely obsessed with the Dreamcast. I follow his channel almost religiously, and like he did a video talking about that. And he's like, "Well, this is why I think it's been getting so popular." And I'm not going to spoil the video, but essentially, it's like every year there's been 2 or 3 like indie releases, and then like all of a sudden 2015, 7 came out.
It's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
And they're starting to be really good, too. They're not just like 2D, I've made my first video game, here we go. They're starting to be really, really involved, which is what I find to be exciting about them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing that I was going to make a video on it, but I never ended up doing. I don't know, Mario, if you remember, but a while back I released a video talking about a game called Haxor that was created for the 3DS.
Yes.
Well, basically, it was a guy over at GBA Temp that has some knowledge of game development, and he released it. It's a homebrew game for the 3DS, and he actually, after I made that video, contacted me, and I meant to make a video about that, but basically was just thanking me for giving him a shout-out type thing on his game, and saying that he is working on his second game for homebrew for the 3DS, which I think is fucking awesome, dude.
That's fantastic. Hey, any type of homebrew support we can ever see on a game system is always awesome.
Yeah, because ultimately, I mean, I've said that before in my videos, but as much as I do like just cosmetically modding things, the ultimate goal is to basically create, not destroy, And when you're supporting people that are actually using their knowledge to add things and create games that don't have the funds to get behind a big studio, I think that's an awesome thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I thought that was really cool.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's always neat to see all this stuff. Yeah. So, Borman, I'm kind of wanting to know what is some of the, because I'm assuming a lot of people here who are listening are going to be new to your channel and everything and new to your content, but I guess what are some of the holiest or like best examples, or like some of the stuff that you would carry around in a Triforce with you of just like awesome stuff of things that you have found, either hardware or software wise? Because I can name off a few things, so I kind of want you to name off your stuff as well too.
So, I mean, we already talked about Star Wars. That's online now if you go and look for it. It didn't come through me, so don't come after me.
I did see some dude from 4chan ended up leaking it out.
I know the full story. I knew it was happening. That's what happens when people aren't always as honest as you want them to be.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay. The things that I love, especially, are things that I get from developers. So something like Stargate SG-1. The TV show went on for 10 seasons. We had the spin-off, 5 seasons, 2 for another show, and yet it never really got a good game.
Mm-hmm.
They tried, which was the Stargate SG-1 The Alliance for the PC, Xbox, and PS2. And as a huge fan, being able to play that, being able to talk to the developers about it, that was kind of one of my big highlights.
I mean, that's just invaluable right there. Now, did this game, because I'm completely oblivious to the Stargate franchise and all that, but did that game ever come out, or was it canceled?
Completely canceled.
Okay.
And what makes it interesting is it was fully voiced by the people on the show, so you have all this voice acting, all this interesting story, because it was actually being written by some of the people who worked on the show. And again, now that it's been canceled, some people have since passed away, So the content that MGM, who is the right holder, is sitting on right now, I mean, it's amazing.
They just have like this wealth of information there, but I mean, at this point, they really can't use it or anything because like all the developers, like you said, the studios probably aren't there. The same developers aren't going to be there. That's old code as well too. Like it gets to
it
the
was
point.
Unreal Engine 2. So I mean, that's not going to help anybody. But that voice acting, even just that little bit of it, you could put that to a comic, like a visual comic. Why not? So I mean, there's options out there.
Yeah. No, because there's been other projects I've seen you work with as well too, and I think one of my favorites is like this is someone like I myself am quite passionate about this show, but like the South Park build that you had, or the South Park game that I know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I know it was revealed by I think. It was revealed sometime 1 or 2 years ago by someone who got a development kit, and then Happy Console Gamer talked to the person who bought that development kit, and then you got that development kit that had the game on, right?
There may have been somebody else in between there, but that's the general idea.
Of course, and yeah, disclose whatever you want or don't want to. But no, as like myself, as someone who is a huge fan of that show, and I don't think we got I still am, but like we didn't get a proper game until the Stick of Truth, which is a excellent nod to the franchise right there. It was cool seeing that game could have been, if it came out, it could have been the first good South Park game. And nobody knew anything about it. Like, even the first person that had anything that surfaced before Happy Console Gamer, like, barely anyone knew anything about that.
Which is sad, because there were those of us out there who were doing the research. We did have some idea of the fact that this company in Eugene, Oregon was working on this. So we did have some idea, but they would never respond to emails. So the story that Happy Console Gamer got out there was not the best, so I had to go through and try to correct some of their mistakes, which is one of the problems when people go out, they just start saying things at first glance, which brings me to one of my other videos that I just did, the so-called World of Warcraft prototype.
That was one of my favorites as well, too. I've never played World of Warcraft, but like for years, I also thought it was a World of Warcraft prototype.
Right. I mean, if you look at it, it looks like at least World of Warcraft, maybe Diablo, but it wasn't. It was by Ubisoft. It was the Settlers game. So, I mean, correcting that type of myth that grows over the years, it can be really hard.
What made you decide originally to get into YouTube? Was it to be able to share some of these things that you had in like in a format other than on the forums?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when YouTube was first starting. Back then was kind of right when I was starting. I had started the idea as an online gaming magazine, but I mean, there weren't any people really recording good gameplay footage back then. So I had my first channel in like 2006. So YouTube was not owned by Google then.
No, definitely not.
I remember recording Dreamcast footage of that sort of thing. So that was always at the back of my mind, trying to get this stuff out there, because it's not like I don't care if I do it, but I want the developers to see that somebody out there cares, that they shouldn't be throwing this stuff in the trash. So I would rather not spend my money on it, to be honest. It's cool to be able to play these things. But if the developers do it, that's going to be so much better than somebody like me coming through with a shovel trying to pick up what I could possibly ever do.
Got you.
So that's the point of the YouTube channel, just trying to bring attention to these things.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Of course. Yeah, no, it's always great to have that on hand.
Now, in terms of hardware, I mean, I've got just about any type of original Xbox development kit out there, from the original Alpha Towers, which were just you always say that Xboxes are just kind of PCs in a black box. These were PCs. I mean, they ran almost Windows 2000 for the earliest models. Then I have the beta hardware, I have the final hardware. I do have other consoles. Xbox was kind of neglected, so I picked that up, and I was able to do a lot when nobody else was. I've got 360s, I've got PS3, some DS stuff, some Game Boy Advance. It's a bit of a mix, but the Alpha kit for the Xbox I think is the coolest.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. Yeah,
awesome.
I've seen plenty of those. I've never bought one or anything though, but they're definitely
they don't come up anymore. I mean, years ago you used to see them, if not the full unit, then the case at least. So I've got a full unit, which is stock. It's not in the best condition, but it works, including an unreleased game on that, which is cool, based on the AI movie, the artificial intelligence.
Really, there was a game for that.
Yeah,
I
it
did
was
not.
a fighting game. Go figure.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
so there were actually rumors a few years before that there was one of these games out there, but nobody had details on it.
Of course.
And then I have another case of the alpha kit. So, I mean, there's so much good stuff that's been just kind of abandoned over the years that I've been trying to find.
Mm-hmm. The thing is as well, too, then a lot of these, like for various copyright issues or anything like that, then people might have trouble releasing them. Like not just you, but like companies and all that.
Right, which we just saw with the Saints Row PSP prototype.
Yes.
Volition just went through all the legal hoops, making sure that what they're doing is all right. I mean, they have these big illegal companies. They can do this. They just choose not to. That's what it comes down to, is they just choose not to pursue any of these things.
Of course, yeah. It's disappointing to see that, but at the same time, like I was going to bring up, the Volition thing, where that was awesome, where I had seen, the making of videos, and for anyone that doesn't know, essentially there was a Saints Row game called Saints Row Undercover that was going to come out to PSP, and they were developing it, and then it kind of got canceled, and it was almost lost in time, but there was some new guy there who found a PSP dev kit. And he's just like, we've never worked on a PSP game. And turns out that they had. So then they were going to make a live stream and video about it. And at first they were saying no. And then it kind of turned into a bunch of yeses. And they thought it was the coolest thing. And then after the live stream at one point, the company was just like, hey, here's the ISO. Play around with it. Like, yeah, the game's buggy and it's not going to work. And it's nowhere near complete. But we know you guys want this.
And there's so much that can be learned from it. I mean, there's ideas that work and we get great games out of it, and then there's ideas that don't. Those ideas that don't count. I mean, they're what make those good games eventually be good. So from the research standpoint of people who want to get into the game industry, seeing what didn't work is great.
Well, they say that you learn the most when you fail, essentially. By your mistakes, it's how you're able to create better things and learn things from it versus just succeeding. I mean, you kind of pick up the pieces and see this part of it was great, this part of it sucked. That's how you're able to build off of that.
And being able to draw, like, let's say they were working on a 3DS game. I'm sure that built from their failures on the PSP. They went to the 3DS and it also failed. But, that procedure is something that fans don't get to see very often. They just think a game shows up on day one and that's what it is. Exactly. But there's all these things that happen.
Yeah, and then it's always cool. Like, I mean, you see like little remnants of everything in retail games well too, which is kind of where I first started getting into it. Where I had seen, like, for example, N64 GoldenEye on the retail cartridge. There is a hidden level that was, just a test level that was, badly not badly done, but badly brought over because you're not supposed to access it, and they didn't care, but people were able to recover that. And then there's even a entire, I think, ZX Spectrum emulator in there, and there's like 10 or 15 games on that as well too. They don't have any audio, but still that's stuff that was in the retail game that people found, through modding and all that later on. And then I'm sure there's so much other stuff that was in, the source code and just previous builds that we didn't get to see.
Right, and I mean, when you look at games like, there was a Tiger Woods game on the PS1 that shipped with a South Park episode on the disc to take up space.
Now they did have to recall that later, and they reissued it, right?
Yeah, and who knows how many discs are out there versus those without it. But, I mean, the fact that stuff happens. Then there was a DDR game. So I think their source code was shipped as demo space, blank space, or they said it was blank space on the disc padding. So there's all sorts of cool leftovers that get in these games if you just look around a little bit.
I know even another thing was I had seen with Crash Bash like years ago. I don't have this copy, but there was a demo disc that shipped out back when they put an entire demo on one disc. But at the time, it was actually easier to just put a beta build of the game on there and then just put restrictions on it so that without a Game Shark or any type of modding tools, you couldn't play those other parts of the game. But it was much easier to do that than to create a demo of it. So they said, okay, we'll just go ahead and take this slightly modified beta, slap it on here, bam, it's a demo. And people didn't find out until years later when they looked at it. They're like, wow, this is almost the full game, but it's on a demo disc.
That's badass. I didn't even know that. That's sick. I do know that there's been a lot of, I mean, I don't have exact times off the top of my head I can think of, but just basically things where people have been able to look and basically through source code see that there was supposed to be more to a lot of games that, didn't happen. Like, they kind of left closed doors, but there's still doors there for things that could have been, or maybe it was on the back burner type thing.
Which is where a site like the Cutting Room Floor, they're a wiki that is dedicated to finding those things. That's just an awesome resource, even for me, to be able to go in and say, hey, this is what was in the works that was still left in the retail code, so then I can go in with the prototype build and say, hey, look, it still works in this build.
That's awesome.
So they're a good resource too.
What is that called? It's cutting room floor?
Yeah, the cutting room floor, I think it's tcrf.net.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, that's definitely something cool. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, their featured article right now is Donkey Kong Country, but I mean, anything from the Marios to more obscure games, they have a little bit of everything.
I know Beta 64, there was a live stream I listened to that he did a while ago, and he said the reason why he loves, of course he loves Nintendo, but he said one reason why he loves, scouring out, beta information, everything, and making of stuff for Nintendo games is because Nintendo themselves are so secretive about their things compared to other companies.
Absolutely. That's where I got into trouble when I found 4 rare prototypes for the 64.
Really?
It goes back to doing that fundraiser thing because the guy that had them wanted a lot of money. And while I was willing to put the money forward to hold on to it, I couldn't risk losing. It was over $2,000 on these 4 ROMs, basically. So Microsoft caught wind of that. I got in some trouble for that. But
really? Yeah,
they just sent me a kindly worded letter saying don't do that. All their information wasn't accurate, but I got the idea. So that's one of the risks that we live with every day.
Right. Because then at any time, these companies could be like, hey, we don't like that you're releasing that. You just dealt with that with Ubisoft, didn't you?
Right. And I mean, from the video standpoint, Ubisoft really doesn't have a leg to stand on. I don't want to provoke them or anything, but for research purposes, for the things that I'm doing, it seems that I'm in the clear. But with YouTube being how crappy it is sometimes, they just hit that pull button and my video disappears. I get a copyright strike. But they were so kind as to remove that. So knock on wood, I'll be okay.
See, so even for these games that are old and never really surfaced, you still sometimes get in heat for them.
Absolutely. This was a video on the Ghost Recon that came out in 2012, the Future Soldier. I had found or was sent a build from E3 2010 before they retooled the game.
Yeah.
So I showed basically what the E3 version looked like, what they showed on screen during the big press conference. Then I showed what was actually going on. How there was no AI actually doing anything. Button presses that they were shown hitting didn't actually do anything. They did it all automatically. So sometimes companies don't like the truth.
Yeah.
I didn't lie. I didn't make stuff up. I just showed something they would rather you not see. That's all it takes on YouTube. If they don't want it out there, they will hit that button.
And I was going to say one big thing as well, too, that's kind of unfortunate is even from your standpoint where you're creating videos and all that stuff, a lot of your videos that you might put out because of the content ID system and music and all that stuff, technically they are going to be incomplete videos because that way so you don't get a strike or a content ID match or anything. I know there's been times where you've had to take out music tracks or mute music or anything
Star
like that.
Wars is a big one. There's a lot of free music that ends up in games, especially prototypes, just to take up space and to show that music works. Those get flagged. There's all sorts of games. Even the crappiest game has some sort of music that ends up getting me in trouble. So I remove audio a lot, unfortunately. I try to be honest about it. Hey, this licensed track was playing. In the South Park game, technically they hadn't licensed the music yet, but they had Let's Get Retarded playing as Cartman is trying to find the clothes so he looks retarded.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I say, hey, go put on this song while I'm playing the game. It has the same effect, and it's just as ridiculous.
Of course.
So even if you don't monetize, it still does that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that's just a YouTube thing built in. That's so for example, you see, but really it started with a bunch of scumbags uploading, full movies and then taking not even buying a CD, just pirating a CD online and then putting it all into one video and uploading it, and be like, hey, you can stream this full album here.
Gotcha.
Right. So what happens is then they can run ads on that, so they make money.
Exactly.
Which I don't want them to do. I don't want them making money off my stuff. Just like they don't want me making money using their songs.
And even, this could be a whole nother video and topic, but even the disappointing thing is, it's let's say you do a 1 hour live stream and you're live streaming Grand Theft Auto 5, and then a licensed track plays on the radio for about 30 seconds. If that content ID matches, even though 30 seconds of that is licensed music and the other hour of, or 59 minutes and 30 seconds is your own content and doesn't have anything bad with it, you're not getting anything off of that.
Yeah. And you can fight that but do you want to go to court over it? Which in my case, I'm getting to the point where I'm realizing that I'm going to have to start fighting these companies at times. So I was prepared to fight Ubisoft if I have to. But for most people, like, who's going to fight over a 30-second clip? They'll just remove the audio.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then even when you remove the audio, then that takes away from, the actual video itself and everything. So there's actually several videos I have where I've completely deleted because I use, like, this when I was, younger a few years ago, but I was using, copyrighted music or something like that in the background of a video. It gets content ID matched, and I'm like, well, if I mute the track, I can do it, but then my commentary over it is going to get completely butchered. So what's the point?
Exactly.
Yeah, it sucks. I had it happen once or twice with when I was live streaming to YouTube Gaming or whatever, and I'm so used to Twitch because Twitch, they don't really care at all about what you've got going on in the background, and it got flagged too, and I freaked out for a second because I don't my YouTube channel is clean. There's no issues with it at all, but luckily it just said basically we're letting you know, and we're either muting the audio or demonetizing. It's not something along those lines. I don't really know exactly what it said, but it wasn't a big deal in the end.
Right, and I have a few videos like that, but there's times where if I put in 20 minutes of good research on a video, I'm not going to let a 30-second music clip ruin me. I'm going to remove it.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So even with this, like, kind of circling back to the South Park build that you had before, I know when Happy Console Gamer was originally covering it, he was saying, for example, like at one point when you pick up the shoe, the game just crashed and they didn't know what to do because, I'm not knocking them or anything. I would have been in the exact same position. But you had two guys with recording equipment and all that, and they had this game system and this build of a game, but they didn't know how to debug it or fix it or anything like that or recode anything. But I noticed that, when you were playing it, you were able to fix that up, and I know that is in part to modding. So how valuable has that been towards this whole process?
On that specific example, it's just because they were lazy. There was 3 builds on the Xbox. They played one. If they had gone to the other one, they would have realized that it worked fine. But
Shots
modding
fired.
comes in because I see modding as a way of owning your content. Right now, we're basically paying for licenses for our games. Once those things, they decide that you don't get to play those anymore, we're stuck with that unless modding exists.
That's true.
So for me, I got started using a modded Xbox. What people don't realize about modded Xboxes is past 2000, maybe late 2002 into 2003, all those BIOS, all those modified things, they weren't modified. They were working with stolen Microsoft code. Every little bit of the Xbox system had their source code leaked to these private groups. That's the one thing they don't tell you. But anyway, I just see it as a way of making sure that I can go and play these games how I want to play them, to be able to do this research into all this content. If I don't have a modded system, I'm stuck playing it with how they want me to play it.
That's true.
And I don't agree with that.
I gotcha. And see, for Daniel and I, we haven't gotten into the whole game modding or game tampering or anything like that. Aside from, I don't know, maybe changing a few files, changing some values, changing up stuff with the trainer. But we've been more into the hardware side of it, where we're actually cracking open, the system software, or modifying the hardware, anything like that, to do extra stuff that the company originally didn't intend, but so we can fully utilize our hardware.
Exactly. Like, for me, I'm not into piracy. I pirated stuff years ago. It's just not my thing anymore. I have money. I can go out and buy the games. But at the same time, I want to be able to put these things on my hard drive. Why should I be limited to this disk it could explode in my drive because Microsoft drives are made so cheaply? I want to be able to put this on my hard drive, do what I want, whether it's just play it, whether that's mod the game. It doesn't matter. It's my business. I bought the game. Let me do what I want. And that's why I love modding.
That's actually exactly how I feel about it. And like you said, too, Mr. Mario, I don't know much about the whole coding side of things and how to actually go into the game's files and really modify things to make them do what I want to. Although I really would like to be able to. I think it goes back to the whole time thing. You've got to pick and choose what you've really got time to do and what you want to invest your time in. But at the same time, it's like if you pay for it, and again, you are not doing things that are necessarily harming the company through, via pirating or stuff like that, I don't see what the harm is in it at all. To me, it's like, I've learned so much from it. To me, it's more like educational in a sense.
Now, then the problem is you have people that come in and they classify everything as educational, including free movies and music and anything else they can get their hands on, which that's not going to be the case. And I mean, that's a whole nother topic into itself, you know, like piracy and all that. But I, for one, you know, on a moral, I know legally it's different, but on a moral standpoint, I do agree with that to a point where it's definitely like, for example, I've seen like most YouTube content creators, I can proudly say this actually, I have the Adobe Suite and I paid for it, and most people on YouTube don't pay for it. That's just as easy as you could say it.
But at the same time, if I hadn't pirated it when I was 14 years old, I would never be paying for it now.
Exactly.
So like, I get why we do it and all that, but...
Yeah, because it's kind of one of those things where it's like, yeah, like there's several people, and it's not just going to be you or I, it's people around the world. That is how they're going to learn, because sometimes trials are going to limit you. You won't be able to do anything like that, and you have all these talented people that could be doing whatever they want to, but they might not have the money or the assets to get what they need to do to get it, but eventually they'll be able to do, you know, what they want to. They'll have the money to pay for it, whatever it is.
I feel like with anyone that uses the software and gets to the point where they're actually older and using it on a professional level, they're going to pay for it. I feel like when it comes to these big softwares like Cinema 4D, for example, I know that a lot of people that do like Call of Duty editing and stuff like that pirate that, because it is like it's like $1,000-$2,000 software as well. If you're using that on a professional level, I guarantee you that you're making enough money to where you're buying that software. It's just that you've got a kid that's 13 or 14 that is interested in this shit. How the fuck do you expect him to rack up, you know, that from allowances or something like that? It just doesn't make any sense.
And my stance on it, like from a moral standpoint, is like if you tell me, like for example, you know, you're not, you don't have like a big paying job and you're just kind of using it on occasion, you're learning it. It's like, okay, if you pirate Sony Vegas, I understand where you're coming from. Now, let's say you're a big YouTuber, you have 200, and I've seen this, and it has annoyed me. But when I see like YouTubers, not even 200,000, like 1 million subscribers, literally, and they're talking about like torrenting a movie or pirating a game, I'm like, dude, not even games, but like even software and all. I'm like, dude, that's your livelihood right there. That's how you make your living. You're able to make enough money to pay the $400 or $500 to pay for this and, you know, get further along and everything. And then in addition to that, one thing that people don't cover is, especially when you are in a business, on a personal level, it's different, but on like a enterprise level or business level or anything, you will get slammed a lot harder if you're found to have any improperly registered software or software that you cannot use in an enterprise or business setting, or pirated software.
Absolutely.
Your video that you uploaded 5 days ago, the Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon, I feel like the reason they hit you too is that video is kicking ass, dude. I was just looking at it, like, I know side thing completely, but a lot of people are really interested in that build.
And they all love just how, basically, I've started to take it more seriously. I realized that, you know, I have the time, I have to stop making excuses for making crappy videos and take control of it. That's why, you know, with the microphone that you sent me, that really helped kick my behind a little bit here.
Well,
because I realized that I need to put the proper time into it, because that's how people are going to enjoy it.
Yeah,
You know, all those views that the video had, that's with it being down for 16 hours plus.
I mean, the biggest one I've seen, at least in recent, I'm sure you've had bigger videos, but at least the most recent one that I've seen that's huge is what your Star Wars Battlefront 3 video has almost 500,000.
Well, I wish you guys could see on the old channel, the big Battlefront. That had like 2.5 million views before it put the end to me. But so,
Yeah.
I mean,
it happens.
Exactly. My idea is to bring attention to these things, to show that people care, that you don't need to throw these things out. You don't need to hide behind it. If Ubisoft had said, hey, this is a scripted demo, we're showing you kind of the idea of the game, fine. People would accept that. But now they're looking at that Watch Dogs demo. That's the biggest request right now. What about that Watch Dogs demo from 2012, something like that?
Yeah, the one that one looked lovely, and then, you know, they completely parodied up the game, so it's the exact same as the other versions. Like the PC version is going to be the same as the older systems and all that, and it doesn't look as good or play as well.
Right, and if they had said, hey, this is our target, this is what we're aiming for, would be fine. No issues. Nobody would be like, fuck Ubisoft, I hate you guys. But now, because they've lied by omission, really, because they haven't outright said that this was fully automated or whatever, that's why people get mad.
But
they don't want that to happen.
But I was going to say then, it's not even, just Ubisoft. As you and I know, a lot of these companies, because of the setup they have and everything, most of the time, I mean, yeah, they do have someone playing up on stage at E3, but most of it is a ruse. A lot of it is already scripted in. Like, I remember the very first Halo demo that came out, not demo, but I guess live demonstration, you could say, before Halo was a first-person shooter, and even Halo 2, I want to say, when they first showed that at E3, Bungie and all the companies, they'd come out and they said, they're like, yeah, I mean, you guys want that demo, but there's literally nothing there. Everything was scripted. There was like zero gameplay.
Right, and Bungie has come out and said that. They've been honest about it, and great. I'm okay with that. I get that games aren't done. You're trying to put your best foot forward. A lot of them use God mode, which is no big deal. You don't want them to die. You saw the Uncharted video where Nate jumps off the cliff. I mean, this stuff happens. That's why you want to control it. But to say that this is the game that we have right now is a lie. I'm sorry. And you have to live by that. So when somebody like me comes and picks their game out of the trash, accept that.
Are you okay?
Is Dan gone?
No, I was asking, are you okay?
I'm good.
Okay, because you were getting a little heated there about Ubisoft. I was like, whoa, like, what did Ubisoft
has done it to me multiple times. That's why. Ubisoft has pulled my videos in the past, and I've had to fight them.
I gotcha.
Just because, I haven't stolen. There's games out there that I've turned down because I've thought that they were from hacked systems where they've hacked, whether it's Xbox Live, whether it's their private networks. I could have had a PS4 and an Xbox One 7 months before they came out. I chose not to because I didn't like the source.
Of course.
These are things that are either sent to the press, which is your own fault. These are things that have been thrown in the trash. I mean, once you throw it in the trash, that's it. You've thrown it in the trash. Just because I have it doesn't mean that you get to say, I didn't mean to throw that out. So Ubisoft gets on my nerves sometimes.
I understand. And even as a content creator, I would get that. But even when you're talking about, you have this stuff and everything like that, we had talked about, releasing prototypes and everything like that before. But I know there are several prototypes you have that are public. I don't know if you've released any personally, but I know you also have several that you have not released yet. And I guess at what point would you say, or anybody else, or kind of at what point do people judge and say, hey, this is something that we should release to the public and not just have in the hands of a few people and a few videos online? Because I know you have a lot of stuff and several other people have a lot of stuff where I'm like, I would love to play that. I'd love to get my hands on it.
For me, it becomes a lot about personal risk. Like, I can't continually put my livelihood on the line just to please a few people online. I'm sorry. I would love for you to be able to play it, and I welcome you to stop by and play them sometimes. But like a game like Star Wars Battlefront 3, when you know that they're working on Battlefront over and over again, it took a few years, but it came out. It's Star Wars. It's all these companies involved. It's Disney now. I'm not putting my fingerprints on that. Because I cannot risk everything I own just so somebody can play a video game. I'm sorry, I care, but not that much.
You're asking for a fat lawsuit if you start doing stuff like that,
Exactly. But at the same time, there's games that go from studios that have gone out of business where that's a risk that I'm sometimes willing to take. Now, sometimes we talk about those community releases because I can't put money forward and then not get anything back. Because that means that the prototypes stop coming. I get things that nobody else does because I'm honest. I've been doing this for 10 years.
Really? That long?
Yeah, I mean, I started when I was in high school. I have a master's degree now.
Okay.
So I've been around a while. People know that they can come to me. I will work out a fair deal for everybody. That's fine. Like, money will get you cool things, but it won't give you everything.
Yeah.
So sometimes I just ask for, hey, give me half of what I paid for it. That's sometimes me putting forward $1,000. I think that's fair.
I gotcha. Yeah. Now, then, if anybody's wanting to, I guess, get into this, like, like prototype preservation, anything like that, I guess, what are some tips that you might have, or anything that, like, you'd recommend, or even, I guess, like, I'm not saying explicitly how you got your stuff, but like how you might have gotten started with it all. Like, is this stuff just stuff that like floats around on eBay, or do you have to know that guy in the shady back alley, or what?
Knowing the guy helps for a lot of cool things, but so many cool things show up on eBay. But you have to be willing to do that once or twice a day. Have your searches, have the stuff that you're interested in. Xbox debug kits are pulled from eBay within a day usually. because
Yeah, that's
Microsoft
true.
doesn't want them up there.
I know Assembler
So,
has got a lot of cool shit on it too, though.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we do. We're willing to sell things. We're willing to work things out. I'm always willing to help somebody, but you also have to realize it's not going to happen overnight either.
That's
Like, I started buying just games that were press builds. Some of them are good, some of them are crap. You got to take that risk sometimes, you know. Like, I've put forward $200 before and gotten a game that is basically the final game. It happens.
Yeah.
It sucks, but
Yeah.
it happens.
Yeah.
So you just have to be patient. You have to know your budget, know what you're doing. Go on eBay. Go to different forums, whether it's Assembler, whether it's someplace else. There are probably places out there. Or just talk to me, you know.
Yeah.
I'm always willing to work things out.
And what you're saying is, too, I mean, if you're really going to get serious about this, is to put some money forward because, I mean, there are a good amount of things that you could find freely available online that have been publicly released, but there's also things, you know, you're saying like $1,000, $200, all this other stuff, and even development hardware costs quite a bit of money, too. So, I mean, you're not going to get very far if you're that guy who's spamming on forums saying, please give me download links to this.
Right. It's like Star Wars Battlefront 3 cost me $600, I think, at the time. $500, something like that.
I thought it was going to be a lot more, actually.
Right, which when you think about it, yeah, it's not bad, but then you figure that's $500, $600 for that. There's $400 at the time for the Xbox kit to play it, $200 for the capture card at the time because they're all new still.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think, though, because I've looked, like I said, a lot of Assembler, and I think that as much as I wouldn't be able to use very much prototype hardware, you know, to do much with it aside from preserve it or play games that aren't completed yet, I think that prototype things in general you could expect that it's going to be decently pricey.
Yeah, I mean, and there are things that maybe there's one of, maybe there's a dozen of them.
Yeah,
That's not a lot when you figure there was 100 and whatever million PlayStation sold.
exactly. Yeah, it's definitely, like, I mean, you know, you think, like, for people that are watching that think that, you know, spending a couple $100 on, like, a modified console is a lot. When you get into some of that really rare stuff, like, you're going to be paying top dollar for it. And I'm not saying that, like you just said too, you'll do fair, you know, you'll work with people and you'll do things that are fair, but at the same time, it's still, you got to expect to pay for it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I have a DS kit on my desk that's $400, a Game Boy Advance $300, 2 or 3 Xbox kits at least $300 each. It just adds up over and over again. So that's one of the things that I want to point out.
Yeah, we get it, man. You have money. We get it.
And that's the thing. I don't have any more money than anybody else. It's just that I've been doing it for 10 years.
You've acquired a
So-
lot over time.
Exactly. Like, don't expect to get it all tomorrow. There's stuff that I would love to find tomorrow, but it could take me another 10 years. So you just have to be patient. You have to be willing to talk to people. Don't be like, "Hey, give me everything you own. Who cares about what you paid for it? It deserves to be free."
It's a lot like I could have used, you know, even my inventory as an example, but I think in Gran Torino, I'm paraphrasing here, but what he said, you know, about having tools really makes sense, where it's like, yeah, tools are expensive, but you don't buy an entire shed worth of tools at once. You get some, and then you just, over years and over time, you keep getting them until you have a collection, and you buy what you need as you acquire it.
Exactly. The first thing I started out with was a modified Xbox. I learned to put the Xbox development software on there, and that was, Xboxes were still new at the time, but, you know, that was a reasonable place to start. I didn't all of a sudden jump for a $700 development kit, because what am I going to do with it? I don't know how to use it. There's a learning curve.
Yeah, and then that's even been one thing. Like, I could go out and get dev hardware right now, but I don't really know how to use it is the thing. And I guess how would you start off on that as well, too, for anybody who would be interested in that? I mean, the closest I think I have 1 or 2 Xbox 360s that I've flashed, like, DevNans over to, but that's about it.
I just know what you're interested in. If you're interested in 360 stuff, start with a JTAG unit, start with a RGL loader you could load the X shell onto that. Start with something like that. You don't need to spend money on, there's these X and A kits which come with 1 gig of RAM instead of 512 megs.
Yo, those things
They're
are
beautiful.
Nice. Oh, Daniel, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Those things are
gorgeous, man.
Oh, those things are lovely.
Yeah.
But why spend that money? I have 3 builds after all these years that use that gig of RAM. Most things don't. Most things you can run on just a modified console, so start with that.
It's overkill, basically, for someone just trying to get into it.
Right.
It's a
and
gig of RAM. And I can't believe in 2016 I'm getting excited about that, but hey.
I find that there's builds on eBay that go for $50. Buy one.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. I bought a build of X-Men, the official game. It has early stuff in it. It was $50. I mean, it's just not. You don't have to go and spend all this money.
I will say as well too, like, because I follow you, of course, and I follow other people who've covered, all this beta stuff and everything, and it did inspire me to actually, I'm not going to say what it is because I'm going to make a video at one point in time, but I did get a piece, like, that within the past week, I did get a piece of hardware. It's not a game system, but it is a accessory, and I paid like $40 for it, which when I will show, I mean, it probably is worth $50, but that's the retail version. I have a beta version of it, which I expected would go for a lot more, but it was just kind of someone on eBay who's just looking to get rid of it for cheap.
And sometimes they don't go for more. That's okay. Like, I have 360 controllers that are prototype versions technically, but there's also a small audience of people that cares. That's why we can sell a Battlefront 3 for $600 instead of $6,000, because there's a lot of entry barriers, and there's just a lot of people that don't know what's out there.
And see that, but that's weird that you say that too, because it's like Battlefront 3 of all things. I would expect it to be at least 1,000.
Right, and I mean, you're talking about a game that has had $20-30 million put into it, and yet I can just buy it for a few hundred. To me, it's a fair deal, but I mean,
yeah. Hey, I didn't want to pay $60 for mine, so I got the retail. So
I wouldn't pay $60 for it either. So
oh, shots fired. Be like, you know what? Your game was so bad, I would have rather spent $500 on the unreleased version that's glitchy and barely even works compared to the $60 polished version that you all released.
But then you have things like massively multiplayer games where their servers go offline, and what are you supposed to do? Just accept that the game that you loved is gone? No, you mod things, whether it's the software or things like EverQuest Online Adventures, which was on the PS2. You have to mod your hardware, then you have to mod the software, and I don't even think there's a server emulator out for it yet. So there's all these different modding things that are so important.
A lively one right now would be, I know Phantasy Star Online on Dreamcast still has a loyal audience through custom servers and everything.
Yep, you've got Star Wars Galaxy servers. There's all these cool things that are going up, and we're just now starting to see the copyright law reflect that these things are going on, and we have to let them go on.
I mean, the copyright law is also, it's dated in so many ways as well, too, unfortunately.
And it's a shame because some of what I do could be illegal. It might not be. The lawyers I talk to basically say that you won't know until you test it. And I would rather not be that person to test it. I would rather have somebody big test it.
Someone else take the fall.
Yeah, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars that I don't have. Of course.
But hey, everything is risk-taking, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, every video we put online could be taken down,
especially with what's happened. Especially, this is completely off the topic, but like what's happened with YouTube on the past like month, where there's just like all these huge channels getting shut down randomly, who are literally not doing anything that they could be at risk for, or anything like that. So the platform can be unstable as well too.
Yeah, and that happened to me with my first channel. I mean, technically, because you can't have two channels, this channel isn't mine. It's in my wife's name. So you two people out there, I'm in the clear, don't worry. But because there's so little recourse to do anything, when you start getting these copyright complaints, if they come in like 3 at the same time, you're screwed. That's what happened to me. My account was clean until it wasn't. By then it was too late. So we're at the mercy of all these big companies while we just hope and pray that we can do the thing that we love to do.
We need a revolution.
Someday.
Just not today. I just had dinner.
I've got
tired.
things to do.
Yeah, things to do, people to see, all that fun stuff. Yeah, I was gonna say another thing as well. Like, how well do you see time being a factor in prices for this as well? Because there's this one I'm willing to talk about a little bit, because I'm currently the video's on the cutting room floor. And if you've made it to near the end of the podcast here, because we're gonna wrap it up soon, thank you very much. You, I guess, deserve to hear about this. But have either of you guys heard of Thrill Kill?
Yep,
I've heard of it, but I can't tell you where I heard of it.
So, infamous PlayStation 1 unreleased game. One of my favorites, personally. And it played a big role in me getting into modding. But I know now you can easily find the full game available online pretty much everywhere, as well as several different beta builds. I remember I had talked with somebody who, now granted this game was supposed to come out in late 1998, and this person in a forum post had said that the way they got it, they got the game like 2 or 3 months after it was supposed to come out. Again, it was canceled, and they had to pay like $50 for it back then, and it required them to go to someone's house in the middle of nowhere. They opened up their door just a crack, they slid them the $50, this guy closed the door, disappears, and comes back out with a suspicious looking, burnt CDR copy of the game. And people were just like, dude, why would you do that? Nobody in the right mind would do it. And he just replied, he's like, hey, it was like early 1999, and this game the game was canceled like 2 months prior. So, yeah, it was worth $50 at the time, and risking possibly getting, jacked and raped and killed and all that stuff. Maybe or maybe not in that order.
Yeah.
So that game was, at least one of the builds was uploaded by the developer after it got shut down. I think it was uploaded to Usenet, the news groups and everything, and that's kind of how it started to spread. But most people still don't know about Usenet and all that stuff, so... it was a slow burn, so that's why you had people like that sliding it under their garage doors.
Yep. And I think I have 3 of the 4 builds that are out. So.
Yeah, I don't even know which ones are out there anymore.
I could name them all, but this is not the Thrill Kill video. This is ModChat.
And eventually the game became a Wu-Tang Clan game. Everybody wants to go out there and look.
It was used for the engine for that game, yeah.
Exactly, so...
Yeah, it lived on with Wu-Tang, and then it's kind of funny that, that happened, and we never got Thrill Kill, but we got the Wu-Tang game, and then Wu-Tang had that album that we can't get a hold of because Martin Shkreli is holding it hostage and all. I'm getting off topic. I didn't like that. Anyways.
You talking about
Anybody
Wu-Tang?
is wondering, Thrill Kill's not that good. But it's a curious story, and not every game has to be good.
It is, and I actually do cover that in the video where I even say, I'm just like, it's not the best game ever. A lot of people hype it up. It's all right, but honestly, it is my guilty pleasure.
And there's a lot of canceled games like that. I have a canceled game based on the Rocket Power Nickelodeon cartoon.
Wasn't there one that came out?
There was, and then this was the sequel that was going to come out.
Gotcha. What platform was that on? Because I know the first one came out on PS1.
This was a PS2 and Xbox. There's a game called Zero Gravity Zone that also came out on Game Boy Advance, which is probably along the same idea, because this was called Zero Gravity Zone. But, it's not good. All these canceled games just aren't good, and they still cost a lot of money. Nobody cares but me sometimes.
Well, the reason why is because you're the one who's paying for this and willing to, pay the bill, and I'm just like, I'll just watch. It's fine.
And there are others out there, but the way I see this, I'm willing to share, at the very least, information. I'm willing to occasionally share a build, whether that's for free or not. There are collectors out there with stuff that would blow your mind that I can't talk about because they don't want people to know about it. They buy it because they want to be the only one. I buy it because I care about the games. Seriously. And, I've talked to people in museums, and that's the ultimate goal, is to find some sort of system which is going to involve modded consoles, because these development units aren't going to last forever because they're hunks of crap sometimes. So we need to have some sort of system where people can access these things, whether that's to play it, whether it's to do research. I'm just trying to hold on to things as well as I can until we get to that point.
Well, just recently, the EFF, didn't they put out something saying that now, like, for museums and other things, like, if a game or a system cannot be used without modifying it, you can now modify it.
Kind of. I don't think
I don't know all the details on it, but it was something like that. They're using it. I know they're using it to their advantage with the video game museums.
Yeah, and that's kind of where it's starting. But then you have emulators like MAME, where you're not sure exactly what the licensing is on it. So there's been companies who have gotten in trouble for using emulators that they don't own and putting them in retail releases. Mm-hmm. So, it's give and take by the communities.
Retron 5.
Yeah, that was a lot of take.
Yeah. For anyone that doesn't know, all that stuff was open source, but it was open source, and you could not resell it. Was the thing. So
right,
what they were doing was
decide.
Which they were taking. So the people who made the Retron 5 took the source code for these emulators that was freely available and ended up monetizing it, which they were not supposed to do. So I don't know how that's happening now, because I just bought a Retron 5, so you can still buy them. They're still on sale. They're still in production.
And again, it's going to come down to who is going to be willing to step up and challenge them. Because these emulators have so many authors, so you have to assume that one of them at least has said, don't do this. Now, does that person care enough? No, so companies are going to get away with it.
Of course.
Retron 5 is what, like a retro duo?
It does like 10 different systems. I think it does like all the Game Boy games, and it does Famicom, Nintendo, Super Famicom, Super Nintendo, Genesis, I want to say, and maybe some others in there.
Game Boy Advance, did we say that?
I think,
Something like
yeah.
that.
I said Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy
I
Advance,
can't
like all the Game
remember.
Boys in there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I like having all the original consoles and all the retro stuff, but I mean, for space purposes and just being able to play all your games in one, that's pretty badass.
Oh yeah, dude, this thing is going in the living room.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome, dude. Let me. Once do you already have it or no? It's on the way.
No, it's going to be on the way.
Okay. Whenever you get it, I'll set up, do video on it, because if it's any good, I'm probably gonna get one too.
Okay. Anybody who's looking, by the way I got it, it's, even though it's out, I had to pre-order it, but as much as I hate them, GameStop, they're selling them for $100. Everywhere else is $140, so that's why I got it.
It's called the Retron 5?
Retron 5.
Okay, I'll take a look.
Even though it does like 10 systems or so, I don't know.
Yeah, there were other ones kind of before that by the same company that used clone hardware. This one uses emulators.
Because I think there was the Retron, which was the Nintendo. Retron Duo was Nintendo Super Nintendo, and Retron 3 was the Nintendo Super Nintendo Genesis.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I just know that because when I worked at a game store, we sold the Retron 2 and 3.
It's awesome, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, and people are willing to pay for that too, so I mean, it works out. Yeah, anyways, I think it's we're pretty much at an hour now, so unless if we have anything extra to say, I guess we can wrap up here, unless you all have anything extra?
We could go on for hours if you wanted to, but
that's
we'll
true.
Be kind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll be kind. We normally try and keep the ModChat episodes around an hour-ish or so, but hey, you're more than welcome to come back for a part 2 on this if people want it.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of stuff that we barely even touched.
Yeah. We just talked about how do you need this money?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to give me money, there's a Patreon campaign going on YouTube channel. So there's my plugs. Patreon.com/PtoPOnline and YouTube.com/PtoPOnline. Lots of prototypes, lots of cool stuff. Thank you.
Definitely go check him out. I mean, he's got some really kick-ass videos, so I highly recommend that. Yeah. Anyways, this is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for listening, watching, everyone, all that stuff. If you are listening to this or watching it on YouTube, please let us know what you thought down below in the comments section. And, anything else, like if you want a part 2 to this, anything else you want to have us cover, and all that other good stuff. We do read the comments and listen to user feedback and everything. You can also find us on iTunes, Podbean. We have a Facebook page as well, too, that we don't use too much, but we're trying to use it. And we are currently in the works. We've been approved, but we are currently in the works of getting ModChat on Google Play, so we'll be on your iPhone and your Android device here hopefully soon.
Which I'd like to thank you for setting that up too, because you have been kick-ass with getting us out there.
Hey, dude, no problem, man. It's just I love doing this, so it works out. But right now, it's we've been approved, which is good. It's just we're currently waiting on Google themselves to put out the podcast feature to everyone.
Okay. So it's around the corner.
Yeah. I'm at Google's point now. Like I already approved it. I have it up there. That's it. It's out of my hands.
Okay, right on. That's badass. Well, and I guess I too would like to one more time thank our guests for coming on the show. It was definitely a lot of fun having you on, and you know a lot of things in regards to beta and just dev hardware and stuff that I really don't have much knowledge on. So it's really cool to have you and for you to take your time to come on and share some of your knowledge and information with our viewers.
Thank you. I mean, I love coming on and talking about this stuff. Clearly, I'm passionate. We say a lot of bad things about Ubisoft sometimes, but again, the fact is, if they're not going to care about their games, I am, whether they're good or bad. So it's all about passion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, thank you for that, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, you are the anti-Martin Shkreli when it comes to prototypes. Yeah.
I guess I'll sign off too on my end. So, Dope Wonder, thank you guys as always for checking out episode 14 of ModChat. So, yeah.
Woo! 14.